They mocked her Earth bracelet, until Instructor went silent like he'd seen that symbol in a nightmare. Lyra had always felt a quiet pride in her heritage, a pride that she carried with her everywhere, hidden in plain sight. On her wrist was a small, delicate bracelet, made of a material that shimmered faintly under the Academy's artificial lights. The bracelet was etched with tiny symbols, intricate lines that seemed almost alive when she moved her hand. To her, it was more than an ornament. It was a link to a world she had never truly left behind. Earth. The stories of its oceans, forests, and people had filled her childhood with wonder, and this bracelet was a reminder that she was the last thread of that legacy, a living connection to a planet the galaxy had mostly forgotten. Her arrival at the Galactic Academy had been quiet but noticeable. The Academy was unlike anything she had imagined. Towers of polished metal stretched into the sky, holographic banners flickered with the colors of 1,000 worlds, and beings of every imaginable shape and size moved through the courtyards, their conversations a melody of languages she didn't understand. She felt small here, a human among legends, but she refused to let herself be intimidated. She straightened her shoulders, held her head high, and stepped forward. The other cadets noticed her instantly. Some were curious, some indifferent, but most were dismissive. Lyra's Earth bracelet caught their attention immediately. During the first orientation, she felt the weight of eyes on her wrist as alien students whispered and pointed. A pair of tall, insected cadets snickered as she passed, their voices sharp and clipped. "Look at that antique," one hissed. "Who even wears that anymore?" She had trained tirelessly, honing her reflexes and endurance, but still, she felt the sting of being underestimated. Every time someone mocked her bracelet, she reminded herself why she had come here. Not to fit in, not to be accepted, but to show that humans, though few and long forgotten, still had a place in the galaxy. Master Valen was the first instructor she met. He was a tall humanoid with gray skin and piercing amber eyes that seemed to look through her, reading her thoughts before she could voice them. He carried himself with a quiet authority, and the cadets treated him with a mix of respect and fear. On the first day, as he scanned the room, his gaze briefly paused on Lyra's wrist. He said nothing, only nodded and moved on, but she felt it, the almost imperceptible hesitation. The students around her didn't notice, too busy making their jokes and scoffing at her small, human frame. By the second day, the teasing became more overt. In the common area, a group of cadets cornered her while she tried to study. "That bracelet is ridiculous," said a sleek, blue-skinned alien with luminous eyes. "Does it even do anything? Or is it just a pathetic decoration for primitive humans? Your people were forgotten centuries ago. Why cling to the past?" She pored over ancient star maps, texts on interstellar diplomacy, and accounts of old Earth explorers who had once traveled among the stars. Each word strengthened her belief that humans were more than the galaxy's forgotten race. They had creativity, cunning, and resilience. They had a way of surviving against odds no one thought possible. On the third day, Master Valen called the class to the strategy room. The room was vast, walls lined with holographic projectors that could simulate entire battles. Cadets from all species gathered, their expressions a mixture of excitement and intimidation. Lyra took her place at the far end, her bracelet faintly catching the light as she positioned herself. Valen began the lesson with a discussion of ancient battle tactics, drawing examples from legendary conflicts across multiple galaxies. As he spoke, his gaze, almost imperceptibly, returned to the bracelet. Lyra felt a strange tension in the room, a shift that even the other cadets seemed to sense but couldn't explain. The more he spoke, the more his words faltered, like he was trying to reconcile a memory he had buried long ago. A student nudged her, whispering, "Why do you even wear that thing? Don't you know it's probably cursed or something?" Something about the symbol she wore had affected him, though she didn't yet know why. Later that evening, she returned to her quarters, exhausted but alert. She examined the bracelet closely, tracing the etched lines with her fingers. Her mother had given it to her before she left Earth, saying, "This will guide you when the galaxy doubts you." Lyra had never understood the full meaning of those words, but she felt it now more than ever. The symbol wasn't just decoration. It was a key, a connection to a legacy she was only beginning to uncover. The Academy's corridors were quiet as she made her way to the training hall. The walls were sleek, silver, and cold, but the air thrummed with potential. Cadets trained relentlessly here, their bodies and minds pushed to limits humans seldom reached. Lyra's heart raced, but not with fear. With every step, she reminded herself that humans were clever, adaptable, and strong. When she entered the hall, a group of cadets were practicing coordinated maneuvers. They moved with precision and speed, yet there was a mechanical predictability to them that humans often exploited in unexpected ways. Lyra observed carefully, noting weaknesses, predicting patterns. She would have her chance soon. Master Valen entered the hall shortly after, his presence commanding silence. He moved slowly, scanning the cadets, and then paused again at Lyra. The briefest flicker of recognition passed over his face before he masked it with a neutral expression. Lyra's stomach tightened. Whatever this symbol represented, it had clearly triggered something deep within him. The practice session began, and Lyra's moment arrived. She engaged in mock combat with an alien cadet who had openly mocked her earlier. The fight was swift, testing reflexes and strategic thinking. The cadet lunged aggressively, expecting to overwhelm her with strength and speed. Lyra sidestepped, using their momentum against them, and guided them into a controlled stumble. Her movements were precise, almost instinctive, and the hall fell silent as the demonstration ended. Even some of the mocking cadets exchanged uncertain glances. Valen's eyes lingered on the bracelet longer than usual. He did not comment, but his silence was more telling than words. Lyra understood then that she was not just facing the challenges of the Academy. She was facing centuries of assumptions about humans. The galaxy had underestimated her people, but that would change. Returning to her quarters, Lyra felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. The bracelet, warm against her skin, seemed almost to pulse in response to her emotions. She wondered what secrets it held, what history it carried. One thing was clear: she was no longer just a student trying to survive. She was a representative of a human legacy, one that had been forgotten but not lost. As she lay in bed that night, she imagined the galaxy beyond the Academy, the distant stars and planets she would one day explore. She thought of Earth, the stories of resilience, ingenuity, and courage. Her bracelet was a reminder that humans, though few and underestimated, had an indomitable spirit. She closed her eyes, determined that when the galaxy finally looked back at Earth, it would see a people capable of brilliance, strategy, and courage unlike any other. And somewhere deep within her, Lyra knew that the bracelet's symbol was more than a memory. It was a promise that humans would not only survive but thrive, even in a universe that had long dismissed them. The next morning, the Academy buzzed with the usual energy, cadets hurrying to classes, holographic displays flickering with announcements, and the hum of anti-gravity transport platforms filling the corridors. Lyra moved carefully through the crowd, her bracelet resting lightly on her wrist. Despite the teasing and whispers from other cadets, she felt a quiet confidence growing inside her. She was beginning to understand that the galaxy had its own rules, and humans had always been good at finding ways to bend rules in their favor, even when the odds seemed impossible. Her first class of the day was strategy and tactics, led again by Master Valen. The other cadets chattered as they took their seats, some still smirking at Lyra's bracelet. "Still wearing that old thing?" one of them whispered. "Does it actually do anything?" Lyra ignored them, focusing on the lecturer. Valen's eyes swept across the room as always, but this time they lingered just a little longer on her wrist. He didn't speak, but his pause was enough to send a ripple of unease through the class. Even the most confident cadets noticed it, though no one could explain why. Valen began the lesson, outlining the tactics of several ancient human battles that had once been considered minor, insignificant skirmishes. His voice was calm, precise, yet Lyra could sense a subtle tension as he spoke. It was almost as if recalling these old human maneuvers stirred something inside him that he was trying to suppress. The cadets murmured among themselves, curious at the mention of humans, while Lyra sat silently, absorbing every word. To her, this was validation. Humans had been underestimated, but they had always found clever ways to survive and win against more advanced opponents. During the lesson, the class moved into a simulation exercise. A large holographic battlefield unfolded in the center of the room. Cadets were required to plan attacks, coordinate defenses, and predict enemy movements. Lyra had studied tactics like this for years, analyzing patterns, learning how to anticipate opponents. As the simulation began, she quickly noticed patterns in the alien cadets' movements, predictable, almost mechanical. They relied heavily on brute force and overwhelming numbers. Humans, on the other hand, had always relied on adaptability, quick thinking, and clever maneuvers. She realized that the very thing her classmates mocked, the bracelet, might be more than a symbol. It could be connected to a way of thinking humans had mastered long ago. Lyra's turn came. She activated her holographic controls and began directing her forces. She positioned her units with careful precision, baiting stronger opponents into traps and using terrain to her advantage. The other cadets laughed at first, seeing a human attempt to control such advanced technology. But as the simulation progressed, their laughter faded. Lyra's units moved with surprising coordination and efficiency. She anticipated enemy attacks before they happened, countering each move with clever strategy. Even Valen's eyes narrowed, his usual calm expression betraying a flicker of concern. For the first time, Lyra felt a thrill of recognition, not just for herself, but for the human spirit she represented. After the simulation ended, the cadets gathered in small groups, discussing results and pointing out mistakes. Some tried to rationalize Lyra's performance, claiming she had lucked out or that the simulation was flawed. Lyra simply smiled quietly, refusing to boast. She knew it was more than luck. Humans had always relied on intuition, ingenuity, and the ability to read situations in ways others could not. The bracelet on her wrist seemed to hum softly, almost as if it recognized her growing confidence. Lyra did not yet understand why it responded, but she felt its presence strengthening her resolve. Later that day, during a break, a few cadets confronted her again. One of them, a tall, red-skinned alien with 4 arms, leaned over her workstation. "That bracelet, it's ridiculous. Do humans even know how to fight, or do you just rely on old stories? That's what makes us strong." As the day progressed, Master Valen called her aside during a break. He led her to a quiet observation room overlooking the training grounds. The room was dimly lit, filled with monitors displaying real-time data from cadet exercises. Valen did not speak immediately. Instead, he studied the bracelet on her wrist, his expression a mixture of awe and unease. "This symbol," he finally said, his voice low, "where did you get it? What does it mean?" She had known the bracelet was important, but she hadn't realized its true significance. "Then it's not just a decoration," she said softly. "It's part of a legacy." It was not merely her presence. It was a reminder that humans had once been powerful, clever, and capable of shaping the galaxy in ways others had forgotten. When she returned to the training hall, Lyra felt a renewed sense of purpose. She approached the next exercise with sharper focus, studying the alien cadets' movements more carefully than ever. She began to anticipate strategies before they were executed, adjusting her tactics on the fly. The bracelet seemed to guide her subtly, as if it carried fragments of knowledge from generations long past. Cadets who had previously mocked her began to pause and watch with newfound respect, some even attempting to mimic her techniques. By mid-afternoon, a new challenge was announced, a team-based exercise requiring cadets to work together to defend a simulated colony against waves of attackers. Lyra was paired with a diverse group, including aliens who had been openly critical of her earlier. At first, her teammates doubted her, questioning her ideas and strategies. But as the exercise progressed, her insight became impossible to ignore. She noticed the attackers' patterns, predicting their movements with uncanny accuracy. She suggested formations and maneuvers that leveraged each team member's strengths, turning what initially seemed like a desperate defense into a coordinated counterattack. One by one, her alien teammates began to follow her lead, trusting her judgment despite their initial doubts. When the exercise ended, the Academy monitors displayed the results. Lyra's team had achieved near-perfect efficiency, defeating the attackers with minimal losses. The room erupted in murmurs of surprise and admiration. Even the cadets who had mocked her earlier now looked at her with a mixture of respect and curiosity. Master Valen entered the hall at that moment, his usual composed demeanor intact, but his eyes betrayed a deep and lingering thought. He approached Lyra quietly and said, "Your people, they were underestimated, far more than I realized. You have a gift, a way of thinking that others have forgotten. Perhaps it is time for the galaxy to remember what humans are capable of," he said, his voice quiet but firm. As evening fell, Lyra returned to her quarters, exhausted but exhilarated. She sat by the window, looking out over the Academy's sprawling grounds. The artificial sun cast long shadows across the courtyards, and she imagined the galaxy beyond, filled with countless worlds waiting to be explored. She touched her bracelet gently, feeling the subtle warmth against her skin. The events of the day had proven one thing: humans, though small and underestimated, still had power, insight, and determination. The bracelet was more than a symbol. It was a reminder of all that humans had accomplished, and all that they were capable of achieving. Lyra understood that her journey at the Academy had only just begun. The teasing and doubt of her peers were temporary. What mattered was the legacy she carried, the skills she was developing, and the knowledge that humans could surprise even the most advanced species in the galaxy. As she prepared for sleep, Lyra allowed herself a small, confident smile. The days ahead would be challenging, filled with trials and tests, but she was ready. She was human, and that was enough. The bracelet on her wrist seemed to pulse faintly in agreement, as if acknowledging the promise she carried. Somewhere deep in the galaxy, the memory of Earth and its people was stirring once more, and Lyra was determined to ensure it would never be forgotten again. The following morning, the Academy seemed even larger to Lyra. Its halls echoed with the sounds of hurried cadets, the low hum of machinery, and the occasional metallic clang from distant training rooms. Every corner of the Academy was designed to challenge its students, both physically and mentally. Lyra had learned to navigate these halls with confidence, but today there was an unusual tension in the air. The instructors had announced a special simulation, an advanced tactical exercise designed to test both strategy and improvisation. Rumors whispered through the cadets. This was not a normal training session. Lyra arrived at the training grounds early, her bracelet glinting faintly in the artificial light. She observed the other cadets as they gathered, noting their expressions. Some looked eager, others nervous. A few of the more arrogant cadets glanced at her with subtle smirks, clearly expecting humans to struggle. Lyra, however, felt no fear. Her mind was calm, and her confidence came not from arrogance but from preparation. She understood that the galaxy often underestimated humans, and that underestimation could be a powerful advantage. When the exercise began, holographic displays formed a vast battlefield in the center of the hall. The terrain was complex. Mountains, rivers, forests, and ruins dotted the map, creating opportunities for both offense and defense. Each team was assigned a base, and their objective was to defend it while attempting to capture the opponent's key points. Lyra's team was mixed, including humans, aliens, and hybrids. Some of her teammates still viewed her skeptically, but they had no choice but to follow the instructions. Lyra immediately took note of the opposing team's formations. Patterns emerged quickly. Many of the alien cadets relied on brute force, overwhelming numbers, and aggressive charges. Their movements were precise but predictable. Humans, on the other hand, had historically relied on observation, adaptability, and clever use of resources. Lyra realized that these traits could give her team a unique advantage if she played carefully. She positioned her units, anticipating enemy moves and setting subtle traps that others might overlook. The simulation began, and chaos unfolded across the battlefield. Holographic units clashed, sparks of simulated energy illuminating the room. Alien cadets advanced with speed and strength, but Lyra's careful planning allowed her forces to counter their attacks. She directed units to flank opponents, lure stronger enemies into ambushes, and create defensive chokepoints. Her strategy relied not on overwhelming power but on outthinking the enemy. As the simulation progressed, it became clear that her team was performing above expectations. Even cadets who had mocked her earlier were forced to acknowledge her skill. Master Valen observed quietly from the control deck, his expression unreadable but his eyes fixated on Lyra's bracelet. Every movement she made seemed to echo strategies long forgotten, strategies that humans had once used to win battles against enemies who were considered far superior. Valen's mind raced with the memory of ancient conflicts, realizing that he was witnessing something rare, human intuition in action, enhanced perhaps by the hidden legacy of the bracelet. He did not speak, but the silence was heavy with unspoken recognition. As the simulation reached its midpoint, a critical moment arrived. One of the alien teams attempted a sudden assault on Lyra's base, sending multiple units in a coordinated strike. Most cadets would have panicked, reacting too slowly to counter such an attack. Lyra, however, anticipated the move. She redirected her units with calm precision, creating a counteroffensive that both defended her base and exploited weaknesses in the enemy's formation. The alien cadets faltered, their aggressive advance thwarted. The room was filled with murmurs of surprise as the observers realized the effectiveness of her tactics. Her teammates began to notice something extraordinary. Lyra did not command with force, she guided with insight. She seemed to sense the battlefield, predicting movements before they happened. Humans were often underestimated in the galaxy, seen as fragile and unremarkable. Yet here, in a controlled simulation, Lyra demonstrated the kind of adaptability and cunning that could rival even the most advanced species. Cadets who had doubted her now followed her instructions without question, recognizing that her strategy was the key to success. The exercise continued for hours, each phase growing more complex. Environmental challenges were introduced, simulated storms, shifting terrain, and unexpected obstacles designed to test adaptability. Many cadets struggled to adjust, relying on brute strength or standard tactics. Lyra, guided by instinct and careful observation, adapted smoothly. She leveraged terrain to her advantage, created diversions to split enemy forces, and utilized timing to strike decisively. Her bracelet, though simple in appearance, seemed to resonate with the energy fields in the simulation, subtly enhancing her perception and reflexes. By the end of the exercise, Lyra's team had not only defended their base, but had also captured multiple key points from the opposing teams. The results were unprecedented. The monitors displayed data that stunned the instructors, efficiency, adaptability, and precision far exceeding what had been recorded in previous simulations. Cadets whispered among themselves, some in awe, others in disbelief. Lyra, calm and composed, simply took a deep breath, knowing she had proven something far greater than victory. She had demonstrated that humans could think and act in ways the galaxy had long forgotten. After the simulation, Valen called Lyra aside once more. This time, his tone was serious, and there was a gravity in his expression that she had never seen before. Your people, humans, were underestimated. he said slowly. "What you just demonstrated, it is a level of strategy and instinct that is rare, even among the most advanced species. That's why we endure." She had always suspected the bracelet held meaning beyond decoration, but she had never imagined it connected her to a human legacy capable of shaping the galaxy. "I didn't know it was that powerful," she admitted. "I just knew it reminded me who I am." "You carry not just a symbol but a memory of human ingenuity, resilience, and survival. The galaxy has forgotten it, but perhaps it is time to remember." Every maneuver, every tactic had relied on careful observation, intuition, and adaptability. Humans had always excelled at these traits, even when the galaxy dismissed them as primitive or weak. She sat by the window, her bracelet catching the last rays of the artificial sun. The vast expanse of the academy stretched out before her, filled with cadets, instructors, and endless possibilities. Lyra knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was full of challenges, some even more dangerous than simulations, but she was ready. Humans had always faced overwhelming odds, and humans had always found a way to survive. Over the next few days, Lyra's reputation quietly grew. Cadets who had once mocked her began to approach her with respect, asking for advice and guidance. Some of the instructors, too, watched her with a mixture of curiosity and caution. The bracelet had become more than a symbol of heritage. It was now a symbol of insight, a reminder that humans could not be underestimated. Lyra continued to train relentlessly, not out of pride but out of responsibility. She understood that she carried the legacy of her people in her actions, her decisions, and her determination. Every lesson, every exercise, every challenge was an opportunity to prove that humans, though few and underestimated, had a unique power that could rival even the most advanced civilizations. One afternoon, while practicing advanced tactical maneuvers in the simulation room, a particularly aggressive alien cadet challenged her directly. "You rely on luck," he sneered. "Nothing more. Humans have been doing this for centuries, long before anyone else thought it possible." For the first time, they realized that human thought was not predictable or primitive. It was clever, adaptive, and deadly effective. Master Valen observed from above, noting every detail. He did not intervene, letting Lyra's instincts and the bracelet's subtle influence guide her actions. The more he watched, the more he understood that the symbol she carried was a key to strategies that had once shaped galaxies and that humans, even after centuries of obscurity, could still wield. As evening fell, Lyra reflected on her progress. The bracelet on her wrist felt warm, almost alive, as if responding to her growing confidence and insight. She realized that this was more than personal achievement. It was the awakening of human potential in a galaxy that had long forgotten it. Every action, every decision, every clever maneuver reinforced the truth. Humans were not weak, not primitive, not irrelevant. They were adaptable, intelligent, and capable of surprising even the most advanced species. And in that realization, Lyra found not just confidence but purpose. She would continue to learn, to grow, and to prove that humans had a place among the stars, a place that no one could take away, as long as she and others like her remembered who they were and what they were capable of. The bracelet pulsed faintly against her wrist, a subtle reminder that the legacy of Earth and its people was alive, enduring, and ready to rise once more. The morning sun of the academy rose in muted golden light, casting long shadows across the training grounds. Lyra felt a surge of energy as she prepared for what had been described as the most challenging exercise yet. Today, it would not be a simple simulation. The instructors had warned the cadets that this exercise would combine strategy, real-time decision-making, and unexpected obstacles. Rumors had already spread. Teams would face scenarios that mimicked real combat, testing not only skill but instinct and adaptability. Lyra's heart raced, not from fear but from anticipation. When she arrived at the training hall, the other cadets were already gathered. The room was immense, with holographic projectors lining the walls and a large map of a simulated battlefield glowing at the center. Unlike previous exercises, this one required each team to defend a central command hub while dealing with unpredictable attacks. The holograms shifted and changed dynamically, forcing cadets to adapt on the fly. The instructors, including Master Valen, observed from above, their expressions carefully neutral, though Lyra could feel the weight of their scrutiny. Lyra's team was assigned a corner of the battlefield. It was an uneven section with rivers, cliffs, and dense forested areas, perfect for clever tactics but difficult for coordination. Some of her teammates, still skeptical of humans, muttered doubts about her ability to lead. Lyra ignored them. She had learned long ago that doubt from others was never more than a distraction. Humans thrived on focus and quick thinking, even under pressure. The exercise began with a sudden simulated attack. Holographic enemies appeared, swarming toward their positions with coordinated force. Many cadets reacted instinctively, charging forward or retreating without planning. Lyra, however, observed carefully. She noticed patterns in the attackers' approach, their speed, their angles, the timing of their movements. Humans had always excelled at analyzing patterns and exploiting weaknesses, and now, in this advanced simulation, she was proving it once again. She directed her team with calm precision, guiding units to strategic positions and creating ambush points. Where the enemies were strongest, she focused her defense on countering their momentum rather than confronting it head-on. She used the terrain to her advantage, setting traps in narrow passes and leading groups of attackers into confined spaces where their numbers counted for less. Every decision was deliberate, every action calculated. At first, some teammates resisted her instructions, unsure of the unconventional strategies she proposed. But as the exercise progressed and results became clear, hesitation gave way to trust. They saw that her insights worked. Where alien cadets relied on brute force and speed, Lyra's human adaptability and foresight allowed her team to gain the upper hand. Small victories accumulated quickly, turning what seemed like a desperate defense into a coordinated, effective strategy. Master Valen observed closely, his face betraying a mixture of astonishment and concern. The bracelet on Lyra's wrist shimmered faintly under the light, though subtly, almost as if responding to the tension and focus of the battle. He remembered the history associated with its symbol, ancient humans who had been underestimated for centuries, but had managed to influence battles across entire star systems with strategy, instinct, and unorthodox tactics. He realized now that he was witnessing the resurgence of that forgotten brilliance, alive in this young human cadet. The exercise escalated as unexpected challenges were introduced. Sudden storms appeared in the simulation, altering terrain and visibility. Holographic bridges collapsed, forcing rapid decisions to reroute units. Enemy formations adapted, trying to predict her next moves. Most cadets would have panicked, reacting slowly or relying on brute strength. Lyra, however, remained calm. She adjusted her plans in real time, shifting units seamlessly and exploiting small openings that others might have overlooked. Her team began to follow her instinctively, trusting the subtle guidance she provided rather than relying on sheer force. During a critical moment, a massive assault struck her team's left flank. Hundreds of units pressed forward, overwhelming defenses and threatening the command hub. The alien cadets leading the charge were confident, expecting to overpower humans with sheer numbers. Lyra anticipated their move, redirecting her forces to create a layered defense. She used the terrain to slow the attackers, forcing them into predictable patterns. Then with precise timing, she launched a counterattack that caught them off guard. The attackers faltered, their advance slowed, and Lyra's team regained control of the battlefield. Her teammates were amazed. They whispered among themselves, realizing that human instinct, strategy, and adaptability were far more effective than brute force alone. Lyra herself felt a surge of quiet pride. Humans had always been underestimated, but their cleverness had always allowed them to survive, and now to succeed spectacularly. As the exercise continued, the simulated attacks grew more complex. Multiple enemy teams coordinated simultaneous strikes, attempting to divide and conquer. Many cadets struggled to respond effectively, but Lyra remained composed. She observed the patterns, calculated probabilities, and guided her team through the chaos. She noticed subtle weaknesses in the opponent's strategy, predictable responses, overconfidence, and a tendency to underestimate humans. She exploited each flaw with precision, turning the simulation in her team's favor again and again. By the end of the exercise, the results were astonishing. Lyra's team had not only defended the command hub but had neutralized most of the attackers with minimal losses. The monitors displayed statistics that exceeded expectations: efficiency, adaptability, and coordination far above what had been recorded in previous exercises. Cadets whispered in disbelief, some bowing their heads in respect. For the first time, many realized that humans were not weak, primitive, or irrelevant. They were clever, adaptive, and capable of strategies that could challenge even the most advanced species. Valen approached Lyra quietly as the cadets celebrated. His usual calm demeanor was accompanied by a rare intensity in his eyes. "You have exceeded all expectations," he said, his voice low but firm. "Humans have always been underestimated, and yet you have demonstrated something extraordinary today. This is strategy, instinct, and adaptability at its highest. The galaxy has forgotten what humans are capable of, but you are reminding it. Strength and speed are useful, but we survive because we adapt and outthink our opponents. That's how we endure. I can see now why this symbol affected me so deeply." She had the chance to prove that humans, though few in number, could influence events, outthink more powerful opponents, and leave a mark even on civilizations that considered themselves superior. That evening, she returned to her quarters, exhausted but exhilarated. She reflected on the exercise, replaying each decision, each maneuver, and each moment of insight. Humans had always survived against impossible odds, and she now understood why. Their ability to adapt, to think creatively, and to remain calm under pressure gave them an edge that many species lacked. The bracelet on her wrist pulsed faintly, as if affirming the truth she had always known. Humans were not to be underestimated. In the following days, word of her performance spread quietly through the academy. Cadets who had once mocked her began to approach with curiosity and respect. Some asked for advice, others simply observed her techniques in silence, trying to understand how she achieved such remarkable results. Even instructors took note, recognizing that she possessed a rare combination of intuition, strategy, and human ingenuity. Lyra continued to train with diligence. She understood that each success brought new expectations and challenges. Humans had always thrived under pressure, using intelligence and creativity to turn disadvantages into advantages. She was determined to honor that legacy, not for recognition, but because it was the essence of what her people represented. One afternoon, during a final debrief, Valen addressed the cadets. "Today, we witnessed something extraordinary," he said. "A reminder that even the smallest, most underestimated species can display brilliance that surpasses expectation. This is not just skill, it is legacy, instinct, and intelligence combined. Human capability should never be underestimated again." And Lyra understood that her journey was only beginning. The galaxy had yet to see the full potential of humanity, and she would ensure that the legacy of her people would be remembered and respected. As night fell, she looked out over the Academy's vast grounds. The artificial stars above reflected the distant galaxies beyond, countless worlds waiting to be explored. She knew challenges awaited, real battles, real tests of strategy and courage, but she also knew that humans had faced impossibilities before and had always prevailed. The bracelet pulsed once more against her wrist, a subtle, steady reminder that the legacy of Earth and its people was alive. Lyra smiled. The galaxy would remember humans not as weak or primitive, but as clever, adaptable, and unstoppable when underestimated. And she would be there to make sure of it. The day began with an unusual sense of anticipation at the academy. The air felt heavier, charged with tension and expectation. Word had spread among the cadets and instructors alike. This would be the ultimate test, a comprehensive exercise designed to combine everything learned so far, stretching strategy, teamwork, and adaptability to the limits. For Lyra, it was an opportunity not only to prove herself, but also to show that humanity, long underestimated and dismissed, still had brilliance to offer the galaxy. She rose early, her bracelet glinting faintly in the soft light of the morning. She touched it lightly, as if drawing strength from its history and the legacy it represented. The cadets gathered on the main training grounds, a vast arena capable of simulating complex battlefields spanning entire landscapes. Holographic projections displayed a scenario of a contested planetary system. Teams were assigned sectors to defend and objectives to secure. Unlike previous exercises, this one would combine multiple layers of challenge: terrain, enemy intelligence, and unpredictable variables designed to force even the most advanced cadets to improvise. Lyra's heart quickened, not from fear, but from the thrill of the challenge. Her team was diverse, composed of humans, aliens, and hybrid cadets from multiple star systems. Some were skeptical of her leadership, still influenced by lingering prejudice against human capability. Lyra ignored the doubts. Humans had always thrived under pressure, finding creative solutions where others relied on strength alone. She knew that adaptability, quick thinking, and understanding the unexpected were humanity's greatest assets. The exercise began with a sudden, simulated attack. Swarms of holographic enemy units advanced toward Lyra's sector, testing her team's coordination and strategy. Many cadets panicked, reacting with instinct rather than analysis. Lyra, however, remained calm. She studied the movements carefully, noting patterns and predicting the enemy's behavior. Humans, she reminded herself, had survived countless battles not by overwhelming force but by thinking ahead, adapting to circumstances, and exploiting weaknesses. She directed her team with confidence, placing units in positions that took advantage of terrain and enemy tendencies. Narrow passes, dense forests, and river crossings became traps where attackers would struggle. Lyra used deception and feints to mislead the holographic enemies, drawing them into positions where their strength counted for little. Her teammates began to trust her instincts, following her guidance even when it went against conventional tactics. Master Valen observed from above, his eyes fixed on Lyra's bracelet. The symbol seemed to pulse subtly in the soft light, almost as if responding to the tension and focus of the moment. He remembered the history associated with it, humans who had long been underestimated, yet capable of strategies that could sway entire conflicts. For centuries, the galaxy had dismissed their ingenuity, but here, Lyra demonstrated it vividly. Every maneuver, every decision, every prediction of enemy movement reflected centuries of human adaptability and intelligence. As the simulation progressed, the stakes increased. Enemy units began coordinating simultaneous attacks from multiple directions, attempting to overwhelm Lyra's team. Many cadets struggled, relying on brute force or panic-driven responses. Lyra's approach was different. She adapted in real time, dividing her forces strategically, anticipating the enemy's moves and exploiting weaknesses that most others would not have noticed. Her decisions were precise, effective, and often unexpected. Each success built momentum, inspiring confidence in her teammates and respect among even the skeptical cadets. At one critical point, the holographic enemy targeted the central command hub directly. The pressure was immense. Most cadets would have faltered, their focus fragmented by fear or distraction. Lyra, however, saw an opportunity. Using the terrain and her team's coordinated movement, She set up a layered defense designed to channel the attackers into predictable paths. Then, at the precise moment, she launched a counteroffensive, striking decisively at the enemy's weakest points. The result was extraordinary. The attackers were repelled, their advance neutralized, and the command hub remained secure. Her team was elated. Cadets who had doubted her now looked to her with admiration. The alien cadets in particular were stunned by the effectiveness of human strategy and insight. They had relied on speed, numbers, and aggressive tactics, but Lyra's human approach, calm, adaptive, intelligent, had turned the tide. It was not strength alone that won the battle. It was thought, observation, and cleverness. Valen approached her quietly as the exercise concluded. His usual calm demeanor was tinged with awe. "You have done more than complete the exercise," he said. "You have demonstrated the essence of human ingenuity. It is something the galaxy has long forgotten, and yet here it is, alive and evident in your decisions, your instincts, and your leadership. Humans have always survived by adapting, by thinking ahead, and by finding solutions that others overlook. Strength and numbers can win battles, but intelligence and strategy win wars. That is why humans endure. It represents a legacy of human brilliance, long thought lost. You carry not only the memory of your people, but also a demonstration that humanity's capacity to think, adapt, and survive remains unmatched." Every human who had come before her had survived, adapted, and persevered, leaving fragments of knowledge, instinct, and strategy for future generations. Her bracelet was a link to that heritage, a reminder that humans, though few in number and underestimated, had an indomitable spirit. In the days that followed, Lyra's performance became a subject of quiet discussion throughout the academy. Instructors analyzed her techniques, trying to understand how a human could achieve such results. Cadets who had mocked her earlier began to approach with curiosity, seeking guidance or insight. Even those who remained skeptical could not deny the effectiveness of her methods. The Academy had witnessed human adaptability and strategy in action, and it left an impression that would not fade easily. Lyra herself remained focused. She knew that the recognition and respect she received were not the ultimate goal. Her mission was to represent humanity, to demonstrate that being underestimated could be an advantage, and to remind the galaxy that humans were capable of brilliance when given the chance. Each exercise, each simulation, and each interaction was an opportunity to prove that humans could surprise even the most advanced species. One evening, as Lyra sat in her quarters reviewing tactical data from the day's exercise, she reflected on how far she had come. The bracelet on her wrist glimmered faintly, its lines almost alive in the soft light. It was a symbol of Earth, of human history, and of resilience that had endured centuries of doubt. She realized that her journey at the Academy was a microcosm of humanity itself, small, underestimated, and often overlooked, yet capable of remarkable achievement. As the artificial sun dipped below the horizon, Lyra looked out over the Academy grounds. Cadets trained in distant fields, instructors moved with purpose, and the distant stars of the simulated galaxy glimmered above. Lyra felt a quiet determination settle over her. The galaxy was vast, filled with civilizations that had long dismissed humans as insignificant, yet she now carried proof that humans were more than mere observers. They were thinkers, strategists, and survivors capable of extraordinary achievement. The bracelet pulsed gently against her wrist, as if affirming her thoughts. It was a reminder that the legacy of Earth was not lost, that humanity's brilliance had not vanished, and that the galaxy would soon remember what it had once ignored. Lyra knew that her success at the Academy was only the beginning. Beyond the walls of training grounds, the challenges of the galaxy awaited, and humans would face them with the same adaptability, intelligence, and courage that had carried them through centuries of doubt. In the days following the final exercise, the Academy held a ceremonial review. Cadets and instructors gathered in the central hall, a place of recognition and reflection. Lyra's performance was highlighted, and she was commended not only for her skill but for her demonstration of human ingenuity, adaptability, and leadership. The applause was not just for her, but for humanity itself, a recognition that the galaxy had underestimated a species whose strength lay in creativity, observation, and the ability to survive against overwhelming odds. Valen approached her privately after the ceremony, his expression serious yet filled with respect. "You have reminded us all," he said quietly, "that humans are not to be underestimated. Your people have a legacy that stretches across time, and you are carrying it forward with intelligence, courage, and determination. I believe the galaxy will remember humanity once more, thanks to you. We endure, we learn, and we thrive." As she left the academy for the evening, Lyra looked up at the stars stretching across the sky. Each point of light was a world, a civilization, and a challenge waiting to be met. The galaxy had underestimated humans for centuries, but that would not last. Humans were clever, adaptable, and capable of shaping events in ways others could never predict. Lyra carried that proof with her, in her mind, her actions, and the bracelet that connected her to Earth and the legacy of her people. For the first time, she felt that the galaxy was no longer a place that could dismiss humanity. It was a place that would remember. Humanity had endured, adapted, and survived against impossible odds, and now, through Lyra, it would leave a mark that would not be forgotten. The Academy had been a proving ground, but the real test lay ahead in the wider universe. And Lyra knew with quiet certainty that humans would not just survive, they would thrive. The bracelet pulsed one final time as she gazed at the horizon, a faint, steady glow of promise. It was a reminder that the story of Earth and its people was far from over. The galaxy had underestimated humans, but they had been wrong. Humanity was clever, resilient, and unstoppable when underestimated. And Lyra, carrying the legacy of centuries, would ensure that the galaxy never forgot it again.